actually all went this smooth.
I'm going to say thank you to the compensation team. We appreciate it.
Public comment not related to items on the agenda. Anyone? Hearing none, we'll keep moving. We have to have a public meeting regarding the drinking water state revolving fund. Scott Hall is here. He did one on the, or someone did one on the revolving sewer fund. This is the revolving water fund. Please.
Yeah, okay.
We're missing a public hearing on the budget.
We'll get there.
So this is, as Mayor mentioned, very similar to the clean water or the wastewater side. This will be for the drinking water needs of the community. So same program, but just on the drinking water side. So this public meeting is a requirement of the funding application, and there's been a draft report on display here for the last 2 weeks. It's in front of you here on your slides, so we'll try to work through the slides here the best we can. It'll be a very similar format to what we went through on the wastewater side. A lot of the criteria is the same. So we'll go through project background, the needs of the project, look at the different alternatives considered, any environmental impacts, discuss the recommended alternative, projected project costs, and then the anticipated schedule and Q&A session at the end. So the service area for the City of Big Rapids drinking water system primarily is within the city limits, but there are portions that do extend out into Big Rapids Township, and those are shown there. Well fields are at the northwest of the city, so all the raw water comes out of the ground from the wells and is pumped to the water treatment plant downtown for treatment, where they remove iron and other contaminants. So we look at population projections. Again, this is a similar format to the wastewater projections. We did update the 2020 data point that was revised there to just over 10,000 members. So population projections are trending, holding pretty steady around that 10,000, 11,000 number for future planning. Looking at the water flows, the typical water that's pumped out of the plant every year, right around every day is about 1.03 million gallons per day. So kind of projecting that out with some of the future population projections, we're looking at right around 1.4 MGD for an average daily flow. Again, it's been holding pretty steady for the last couple of years. Just a dip there during the COVID when students were out of town. So working with Mark and Steve at the water plants, kind of identifying some of the needs for the water system. A lot of it comes down to aging infrastructure, some of the mechanical components at the treatment plant, and then some of the infrastructure within the distribution system, water mains and service lines as well. So looking to increase the overall reliability of the system and address some of the remaining lead service line replacements as required by the state. So getting into some of the specific needs here that we cover as part of this project, the State Street water main, one of the main lines down State Street, was originally installed in 1961, so certainly approaching its useful life there, and has had some historic breaks recently that have required emergency repairs. So that's one of the critical lines that we're looking at replacing. The State Street booster station, another critical pump station to serve the high pressure district. The system is a low pressure and high pressure district. This helps serve and maintain that pressure. There's 3 pumps in there, but only one large duty pump. So if that large pump were to fail, there's a bit of a risk there of reliability. And those pumps are starting to age, so looking at increasing that reliability of that system. The next item was the Hills and Mitchell Creek booster station. I've been up here a couple of times talking about that pump station. So that project is included in the funding application. So again, addressing the oversized duty pumps and lack of water storage to help maintain pressure at the top of the hill there. At the water treatment plant itself here, one of the needs identified, as the water gets pumped from the wells, it flows through what they call an aerator, which is designed to bring the iron out of the water. It makes it a particulate so we can settle it and remove it. But in doing that, it adds a lot of air and dissolved oxygen to the water. And if that becomes too high of a concentration, it can cause some potential corrosion issues with small diameter copper lines. And so they've been piloting some tests at the plant and found it actually more efficient to run without the aerator. So looking at removing the aerator and modifying some of the piping there to improve the operation of the water plant. Kind of continuing here downstream at the water plant, after they aerate the water and get the iron to become particulate, it goes to a large clarifier, which is basically a large rectangular basin with a metal clarifier mechanism in it that helps settle the solids out and allows the solids to be pumped out and the clean water to flow out the top. These mechanisms were installed early 80s, and inspection was done in 2021 to inspect the metal components of that clarifier. And structurally, the metal is still in good condition, but the coatings are all starting to deteriorate and fail. So recommending some minor repairs and recoating of those mechanisms to extend the life of those units in service there. So the overall objectives for the project plan are to provide high quality water and service to all customers, improving the integrity and reliability of the system, and address failing water mains and comply with EGLE's lead and copper rules.
To address those needs, we look at alternatives and develop those. For the state, three of those alternatives there are no action, regionalization, and then the optimizing existing facilities. Those are three that the state looks at that you need to evaluate. So the no action is just basically doing none of the repairs. That doesn't really address the project needs because nothing's being addressed or none of the project needs are being met there. The regionalization looks at basically your water supply coming from a regional alternative. So the closest municipality would be Reed City, but since you guys are the bigger customer or the bigger water supplier, that doesn't make sense. They're farther away. You'd have to buy water capacity from them. And then optimizing existing facilities basically just looks at what you're doing now, which doesn't address the bigger infrastructure needs within the system. So then you get to alternative 4, which is the new construction or replacement of existing facilities, which we'll talk about in the next slide. So alternative number 4 would be addressing all of those needs that we just talked about, which would be that water main replacement, the lead service line replacement, State Street booster station improvements, the booster station improvements at that Hilton Mitchell Creek, and then the 2 at the water treatment plant, which would be the influent piping and the clarifier coating and repairs, which would be the recommended alternative for this project. Another requirement by the state is looking at that environmental impact for this project. When you look across the agriculture and all those in the table on the left, most of it's not any no applicable impacts or no significant impacts because it's occurring at existing facility sites. And then mitigation at those sites would just be city approval for construction activities, dust control, soil erosion and sediment controls, and anything needed for in accordance with the Park 39 or the Act 399 permit there. So, getting into the details of each location, we have the State Street water main replacement. So in that picture there, you can see the section that would be replaced. It'd be about 6,500 feet of 12-inch ductile iron pipe, which was from 1961. Moving on, we have that lead service line replacement. There's currently 125 lead service replacements left. The city has been working to replace the existing ones, and there's currently 125 left, which we have wrapped into this project. Booster station improvements and upgrades. At the State Street Booster Station, it'd be adding in that 2,000 gallon per minute pump, a higher capacity pump there for future flows and increased reliability. And then the Hills of Mitchell Creek would be 2 smaller duty pumps to maintain that flow up top, a fire flow pump to meet that 1,000 gallon per minute flow, and then water storage tanks to keep that pressure within the system. Moving on to the treatment plant, we have influent piping modification. So the pipe or the water right now comes in through that bypass line. So we'd be looking at relocating the flow meter and control valve, which is currently on the main line into the plant, and then removing that aerator since now that it's no longer needed within the process.
So the plant uses that input flow meter to control all the automation and chemical feed within the plant. Right now they're taking signals from the well field and trying to control it, so this will help optimize the control and operation of the plant.
And then our last item would be the coating repairs, or the coatings and repairs of the clarifiers. Both of them include repaints of the steel. The West clarifier has steel, concrete floor, and ceiling repaints, and then replacement and repair of the structure members and railings at the East clarifier.
Actually did a similar project at the wastewater plant about 3 or 4 years ago, where we recoated the clarifiers at the wastewater plant just to help extend the life of those. So a successful project in the past. Looking at the overall project cost estimate here, big ticket item is the water main replacement. That's a pretty long stretch of water main in a pretty involved area. So just about $3.2 million for the State Street water main replacement. The lead service replacement, we have 1.125 in there. Kind of working with Mark on what the existing replacements have been costing, and then also including in a little bit of contingency for any additional lead services that may be uncovered as we work through the project. And then the remaining items is about $200,000 at State Street, just under $500 for the Hills of Mitchell Creek, and then $200 for the water treatment plant piping improvements, and the clarifier coating and repairs, just over $500,000. So total capital cost of the project is just under $6 million at 5.77, and then with some construction contingencies, engineering administration, total project budget is just under $8.1 million. Similar to the wastewater side, we look at potential impacts to user costs. This is where we give our disclaimer that I'm not a rate consultant, and there's a lot that goes on to the user rates here behind this map, but looking at financing the full $8.1 million over the 20 years at the current interest rates that SRF is offering, it's approximately $16 to $18 per quarter per residential equivalent unit. So obviously there's a lot of assumptions that go in there and some factors, including principal forgiveness on the loan potentially, and looking at your existing rate structure and what you're setting aside for capital improvements that could be allocated to help fund this debt payment. So the drinking water side follows a very similar funding schedule and program where they look at multiple different criteria for compliance with your water quality parameters, risk of public health, improving infrastructure, and affordability to your customers. So pretty similar criteria to what the Clean Water Plan does. And again, the state will receive these applications from communities and rank them based on how they meet this criteria and distribute the funds accordingly. We did get some feedback on the Clean Water program for affordability and that overburden status, which is one of the critical factors for principal forgiveness on the loan. And the city did qualify as significantly overburdened, which is a good thing for point scoring. So hopefully increase the potential there for some grant dollars The criteria is the same for drinking water, so it's our assumption that you should also qualify as significantly overburdened for drinking water as well. So overall timeline here, again, we'll get this final project plan submitted to the state by the June 1st deadline, and they will go through and score the projects this summer. So hopefully by early September, October, they'll release the scoring and the funding packages that are available to the communities. If everything looks good, we go through with design and construction throughout the winter, and then construction would start probably late 2024 and extend through 2026. That material will out there. So very similar schedule and program to the wastewater side, but a few different caveats here with these projects. So any questions?
Since construction is not going to begin until 2024, what likelihood might there be that 1.875% is going to change?
So they determine the interest.
Which we're within.
Oh, sorry. They determine the interest rates at that September, October timeframe is when they will determine the interest rates for this funding package. So those will be locked in at this fall session. So it may change from the 1.875. It may go. We've heard it may go up slightly, but they'll lock that in this fall.
Thank you.
Yep.
Others? So you can run a mile of 12-inch line under our freshly paved State Street, which is a big hassle. The residents are tickled, without digging a hole.
So there's multiple different methods on how you can do it. We would have to look at if you could directionally drill or if it makes sense to do open excavation. And the alignment of that water main we'd have to look at as well.
So you may be digging up the new State Street. Mark?
No, he's politely talking about digging up the side of the road. Is what Scott's talking about.
Under the sidewalk.
Yeah, in the right of way out on the
Yeah.
one side of the road in the green space sidewalk. There's no way we dig up that road. Their project costs would be higher. Yeah.
Other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go back to the agenda for set, the public hearing on the budget. Mandatory public hearings on the budget. This is the second one. We had one last week. We open the hearing now. Is there comment on the budget for this coming year?
Were there any questions that didn't get answered the first time around?
Commissioners? Public?
I know Mark has a couple points, and then I do as well.
Whenever you're ready, Aaron.
Go ahead.
I talked last time about just pointing out some things, so it's very clear that some of the things that are in there that might not otherwise be as clear. So I just have a few. I'll run through them quickly. In the budget, we have, at the Act 345 Police and Fire Retirement is funded specifically by the voters on their tax bill. And the DV portion of that retirement is nearly to fully funded. This budget includes one final year capture of a payment towards that DV plan, but this will very clearly be the last one. So that'll be a significant change to the taxpayers next year, and it's a nice achievement. School liaison officer, we have one that services the public schools and the charter school. Their payments from those schools are a little higher than they have been, so Chief Haynes worked hard to negotiate those contracts. Our IT department bills or provides service to a number of other agencies, and we have in this budget over $300,000 coming from outside agencies to fund the IT department. Now that's what I have on the revenue side. On the appropriation side, our income tax administration is lower than it has been in previous years by doing it in-house. We talked about that with having Eaton Rapids, I can't think of the name right offhand. The company
Innovative.
Innovative do the work for us, and so we're saving money by doing that, and that showed up in this year's budget. We have a 3.5% increase in this budget for wages for staff, so that's in there as well. We have continuation of our gravel street program by paving one block of Henderson and rebuilding and repaving Darwin in between Jordanson and Catherine. So that's a nice improvement as well on the east side. And we have, with the census adjustments, we're going to have more Act 51 road funding, so we may be able to add some other street paving. We're going to just have to see how that goes. But we also have a fairly broad portion of areas being paved with the Ives Drain project. So that's, paving in town certainly are paying for it though, and that is reflected in this payment table. That there was some question last time. This is at your desk. Is the payment schedule that we received from the Drain Commissioner, and it's just not one fixed payment for the whole life of the obligation. Some feel-good things. Everybody is interested in zinnias. We have them in this year's budget and in next year's budget, and people will be able to pick up zinnias at the June 2nd farmers market. You don't have to get a coupon. Like we have in years past. It's been a couple of years since we've done that, so it's first come, first served, and they go quick. So if you're interested in zinnias, that's something we have in this year's budget and the one that's presented for next year. All the flowers for the downtown plantings, the hanging baskets, and the pots, which are very popular, and those are in here as well. So just wanted to point that out, Mayor. That's all I have. Thank you.
Mark, are drain commissioners not allowed to look for grants?
Oh, I can't imagine that's the case. I don't know. I'll check, Mayor. I would be shocked if they can't.
I mean, the interest payment on that 20 years is nearly $700,000.
That's a lot of money. Yeah. Apparently, we don't have a 1.875 interest rate there, Scott. I don't know what the interest rate is. Yeah, it's high. Do you know what it is, Carl, by chance, the interest?
Mm-mm.
Well, we should find that out and report back to the commission. I didn't ask, but I would assume that they can pursue grants, but I'll follow up on that as well.
Other budget questions, and we'll close the hearing on the budget. So it's closed. Yes, please.
I just want to make a comment on the flowers, the zinnias, the flowers for downtown. I hope you realize, all of us, what joy they bring to the community. I've got relatives that have come into Big Rapids in the summertime and just marvel at the flowers. So there's a lot of goodwill there that goes out. They're beautiful.
Well, I certainly agree. I don't think anybody disagree. We'll keep that in the budget.
We can always agree on flowers, right?
Well, I told you at one meeting, Mancino's had on their marquee or whatever, last year, they had thanks to the downtown for the flowers. That's good.
Thank you. Other comments on the budget? Hearing none, we'll go to general business. A resolution adopting a final project planning document for the drinking water improvements. Do I hear a motion?
So support.
Motion support. Mark?
Mayor, you heard the full presentation. I think it's very worthwhile to go after this type of funding. It'll be interesting to see what we get back. We would not bring back to you anything that was remotely thought about an $18 per unit per quarter increase. That would be shockingly high. So, but those are the numbers that police needs to work under, and that's what's provided in here. But we are very optimistic that the combination of self-funding some of the projects, some grant funding, maybe a reduced scope, we'd be very leery to bring back anything that resembled that type of.
We're monthly, $5 a month is what you're saying, right?
We pay per unit, and I was just talking about.
Not quarterly, we pay monthly.
Right,
About
right.
$5 a month more.
Per unit, which I do about 3 or 4,
Yeah.
so you're talking, 15, 16 a month.
Okay.
And then if you do it on water and sewer, but these are big numbers we're working with, so I don't doubt that they break down to those numbers, but,
And you have to bill that, we have to fund water with our water bills, right?
yes,
By law.
right, yes, you don't fund them other ways, that's right, ratepayers pay for that. No, I don't have anything else, I'd recommend moving forward.
Other comments, any questions, anyone? Hearing none, the roll calls.
Cochran,
Yes.
Heffley,
Yes.
Stumper,
Yes.
Johnson. Yeah. Summit.
Yes.
Next. Are we not gonna hear from Eden Hunt before we vote? He came all this way?
Oh, he's ready to talk to you, I think, man.
I can if you need to, let me know.
The runway story is starting to come in. The seagulls are off the runway now.
Well, that's a good thing.
There's a resolution to approve Mead and Hunt's contract for the runway at the airport. There's 2 different ones, Mark, or just?
There's 2 different ones, Mayor, and Steve and Zach are the best qualified to fill you in on the nuances of each one, and I'd ask if they would do that, please.
Okay.
Yeah, I can get started here, so good evening, Commission. So yeah, I'd like to talk about both the resolutions if possible, both the contracts at once. So the runway, as you know, we've been attempting to get that runway extended and working through that, and there were several meetings where I sat here saying no news, no news, no news. The good news is we did hear back that we did get that earmark. If you remember back to the work, I think it was a work session we did, where Stephanie Ward came in from Eden Hunt, presented on possible funding strategies. Because if you remember, now the estimates are quite a bit higher than what it originally was when we submitted for the earmark. So that had us go back to the MDOT and the FAA to see what other funding mediums we could use, including the AIP funding with bill money, so airport planning money. And actually, I've got Zach Puchaz here from Eden Hunt. He was one of the big ones that wrote our justification study and helped walk us through that. So we went back and forth with MDOT a few times, but we did get final approval from both MDOT and the FAA on March 31st of this year. So we were able to justify just over 4,700 feet of runway by users. So what that does is, of course, we want 5,000 feet is what we're going for. So we're able to utilize that AIP and BIL money to be able to cover that 4,700 and the rest of the earmark and then cover it to the 5,000. So we are able to, with a funding strategy, get the runway extended to 5,000. So in doing that, we've got a couple projects, and these are the 2 contracts that are in front of you. 2 of them, one of them more than the other, as far as very tight time frame requirements, as far as being able to still see the project done before the earmark expires. So that being the environmental assessment. So the first contract is the environmental assessment. That's going to happen over the next 12 months. It's looking at several factors, including noise, farmlands, floodplains, water resources, wetlands, and also biological factors. So it's going to look at numerous things. Mead and Hunt is going to be the engineers to do the environmental assessment for us. And you'll see that the total for that is $382,830.20 cents. So that one is billable by monthly based on the work performed. So that'll be over the next 12 months. The other contract in front of you is for the RPZ, Runway Protection Zone, and the Runway Surface Area analysis, if you will. Looking at overall safety factors. That'll be for the approach on departure ends of the runways, looking at things like zoning and surface planes and all the overall safety around the project, ensuring it can be done safely for use. So that one is correct me if I'm wrong, that one's a lump sum
Yes,
payment.
and that's also a required action by the FAA, so we have to do it.
So both of those being totaled, like I said, that'll be the lump sum. The other one will be a monthly. We are going to be submitting, we do have a financial plan that we are going to be submitting for the AIP funding, the BIL money to be reimbursed, but there may be some cost upfront to the city to be reimbursed. We did meet with Carla earlier today too and talked about that to make sure that it meets with the Treasurer's Office as well. So, with that, I'll answer any questions, or if Zach, if you'd like to say anything.
In the, that RSARPZ, even though it's a lump sum of all billed monthly, so it isn't, you'd have to upfront that money.
For the minutes, can you go through the two plans that you're getting the money through?
Do you mind walking
You whip
through
off those initials, the BIP and the TIP and all that.
Anything that you want to review today?
Oh, the two acronyms.
At least for the first two, maybe.
Yeah, so there's many different pots of money coming from. So AIP is Airport Improvement Program funding. That's the funding the airport gets annually. It's $150,000. And even though it's yours, it has to be approved by the FAA, MDOT has to give its blessing, etc. So there is that pot of money. Bill, I forget what that stands for.
Bipartisan infrastructure?
Yeah, so
Bipartisan
that's the,
infrastructure.
I'll call it kind of COVID relief type money. That's an extra pot of money that can be used for the project, but that follows all the same FAA rules, so it isn't like you can just use that money on everything. So it follows those same eligibility that we had to work
The
through here.
justification.
For the past, I don't know how long, embarrassed almost to admit it, but, so those are the two pots of money. So where that all plays in is that even though it's your money, there are the government procedures to get it blessed and approved and actually in your checkbook. So what it looks like at the end of the day with those two contracts in front of you is that for the first 2 months, the city would be paying that monthly invoice in full for about the first 2 months. Sometime around June-ish is when we'll get the official blessing from the FAA saying, here's the money you're entitled to. And at that point in time, you'll be able to pay yourself back for those 2 months if it goes 3, and then from there on out, for those two projects, that's that 90% payment that's going to be under those two funds, and there's that 5% local match that the city would be under. The state of Michigan will contribute another 5% to make that whole for those invoices. So that's going to work its way until about October-ish, when this bill money, the COVID money, would be available to, again, be paying yourself back whatever you paid before then, and then that'd be used for the rest of the work. That's a real simplistic explanation about getting into FAA funding, and I can get deeper if you'd like.
Where's the 1.8 million earmark come in?
Okay, so where that earmark is, like you said, what we're trying to do is use the eligible money, so that AIP and the bill, the money that you're getting anyway, using that first to pay for that 4,700-foot eligible portion of the project. And then when we get, after we use those funds first, sometime in 2024 is when you'll get the official blessing, as I'll call it again, to use that earmark money. And that earmark money is going to be used to pay whatever that difference is for that environmental and RSARPZ, and then the rest would be used towards the construction. Now, when we get into 2024, I won't go into that deep, but you're going to have earmark, you're going to have AIP, and you're going to have bill in 2024 that'll be used in different intervals for the construction when that happens. It's like the YouTube video of trying to explain quantum physics in 90 seconds. Wow. So
I think you explained that very well.
Yeah.
For what it was.
Like I said, I can go into more details if you want, but that's just the very
We
high
had
level.
conversation today about that red pie-shaped land on the west end. What do you call it?
The runway protection zone.
How high can something be in the runway protection zone?
It varies on the approach slope of the runway. So there's some math involved. So you have the topography of the land, and there's a slope that comes off the runway.
That's not the part. Does the water tank owned by the township, is it too tall?
Everything that's out there right now is under.
Okay.
If there's any infrastructure or buildings, human buildings out there right now, it's under. The trees are a different story, and that's why you're doing these analysis to look at those, right, to see where those are at. But all of the buildings, the tanks are all under.
So it's just in that pie-shaped triangle in the map.
Yes and no. You have a slope that goes out, you know, as those aircraft are climbing out, right? But then there's that specialized runway protection zone that gets a little extra attention, I'll call it, by the FAA.
And then we had heard from that Goshen was concerned that their plant was 70 feet tall, so it couldn't be within so close to the runway?
Yes, that has to do with those, yeah, sorry, I'm going to tell you more about aviation than you want to know. So there's this runway protection zone, and then there's these Part 77 surfaces. The Part 77 surfaces is what they're interested in, and that extends thousands of feet in kind of a conical shape around the airport. Think of it like a football stadium. It's a bowl. They go out. So the farther you are away, the higher something can be. Yep. And
So where Goshen's planning their plant is okay with the FAA?
even if it, because it's off to the side and not on the direct flight path, if they have something that penetrates one of those surfaces, they have to go through a procedure, but I wouldn't see why the FAA would say no to it, because that kind of stuff happens all the time.
Okay.
Yep.
Anyone else?
I
Please.
have something,
Commissioner
Cochran can go first.
I'm just gonna say, Mr. Schroeder, you and your team and the Mead and Hum team, I think you personify the saying that perseverance is unlimited. We have had such incredible conversations about this runway project for I don't know how many years. Now I've lost track, and I just want to say I so appreciate that perseverance, your commitment, your sticking to it, to see this whole thing through. I know there were a lot of obstacles they kind of threw in our way, and on behalf of the city, I really appreciate that effort on behalf of all of you, so thank you.
Yes, here.
I agree with all of that. With regards to the environmental assessment, is this going to multiple agencies, both state and federal? So we're not just talking about Eagle, we're talking about the EPA and whoever else might have some.
It'll fall under that
Regulatory.
National Environmental Protection Act. So we have all the federal and state agencies and tribal and all the required parties
Okay.
as defined through that law.
Okay.
Yep, be a part of that.
Thank you.
The person from Mead and Hunt that can answer every question in the world, what's her name?
Stephanie?
Stephanie,
Yeah,
yes.
tell her thank you too. Man, she is like a machine.
Absolutely.
Amazing person. Others? We better get a resolution passed, Stacy. The first resolution is to provide engineering services for the environmental assessment. Is there a motion?
So moved. Support.
Motion and support. Other questions?
Eric, could I have who moved it?
This way.
Then I supported.
Questions further? We haven't heard anything from the second to back row back behind there yet. Mr. Muccio?
Yes.
He's studying. We haven't heard from you on any of this.
Well, the only question now you can have is there's a well out there, isn't there? There's a well in the airport?
The Big Rapids Township well? Are you
Yeah.
talking about that one? He did ask about that being an approach, and it is clear. So, he
I
did
mean,
work
from an
that.
environmental standpoint, any disruption in aquifer or anything like that, shouldn't be good.
That's what this environmental review contract will look at.
We'll check that.
Other questions? Tammy?
Epley?
Yes.
Gunther?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Simmons?
Yes.
Cochran?
Yes.
Next, the resolution approving Mead and Hunt to do the engineering services for the runway regarding safety, etc. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Is there a motion and support? Questions? Tammy?
Johnson?
Yes.
Simmons?
Yes.
Cochran?
Yes.
Epley?
Yes.
Gunther?
Yes. Thank you for your work, guys. Next, a resolution approving the proposal of Williams and Works for the updating of the city's master plan. Mark?
Yes, we heard from Michelle at our last meeting about the process we went through to get to today. We had interviews with two firms who submitted proposals to do an update or rewrite of the city's master plan and are recommending Williams and Works. Tanya's here from Williams and Works, right behind Michelle. And we are very much recommending their firm to help us get through this process. A couple of things we really liked about it. Number one is that it's not fast. I think fast would not be to our advantage at this moment in time. And number two, there's a great effort paid to public input. that I know is important to the commission, is important to staff as well. So recommending that this evening.
Will you all be here a lot or Zooming a lot, or how does that all go for your company?
Sure. So, just sorry, I'm a little under the weather, so pardon about that. So, like Mark said, my name is Tanya De Oliveira. I'm from Williams & Works, project manager and planner. So we are proposing that we would be here. If you look at the end page of the proposal, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, at least 8 different meetings. We budgeted for them to be in person. If the steering committee, with the comfortability of city staff and city commission, want a combination of Zoom and in-person meetings to save money with the budget, we can do that, but we budgeted for in-person. A lot of times we find that in-person, you get a lot of rich dialogue and body language, and sort of you're also building relationships that will then help you further from beyond the planning process and kind of be used when you actually do the implementation of the plan. I'm of the belief that the plan is great and it's important, but the real work begins once the plan is adopted, and then you go out and do all the things that you were excited about, you know, dreaming about, envisioning about, and doing while you were doing the master planning process. So that's what we budgeted for, but we can be flexible as long as we're following the Open Meetings Act. And making sure that we don't having a quorum, depending on who the members of the steering committee are and stuff like that. But I will help Michelle and Mark navigate that to make sure that we're following state guidelines and requirements when it comes to that kind of thing.
Thank you. Questions from the commission? The elephant's always interesting if you know what the elephant is around here. Both our strategic plan and our master plan is hugely, to me, dependent upon whether the elephant arrives or doesn't arrive. So that's why speed is not always the most important thing in starting this endeavor. You probably know all about that.
I'm sorry, I was talking with Michelle. I didn't quite hear. She
didn't know what the elephant was.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, my familiarity is with the township issue, and however we need to navigate that as a part of the larger community. I'll be happy to sort of help that, facilitate that with conversations, but kind of leaning on Mark and Michelle to help me navigate that. Again, I feel like we are helping to facilitate and move a process forward, and if there's dialogue that needs to happen, we can create space for that. But we're also, what we're being hired to do is help you guys do a master plan, so hopefully we won't be bogged down in other matters. And again, we'll work through that with the steering committee, but it's kind of important to strike a balance with if we need to talk about some things in order to help people, say their piece and then kind of be able to move on, we can certainly do that. But again, we're charged with the master plan for the city of Big Rapids, and we want to make sure that that's the focus without getting lost in other conversations.
Thank you. Anyone? Do we have a resolution before us? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Motion support for Williams & Works bid for the master plan. Other questions? Hearing none, Tammy?
Simmons?
Yes.
Cochran?
Yes.
Epley?
Yes.
Gunther?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Next, we have a resolution authorizing the signing of the MERS 457 participation agreement. Mark.
We have, thank you, Mayor. We have two options, not really. One's not optional, one is optional in terms of the defined contribution portion of employees' retirements. Our optional portion is referred to as our 457 plan. Right now, it is done, contributions are made pre-tax. MERS has provided an opportunity to have a Roth option so that if an employee wants to go that route, they would receive those funds at the end of the day without tax obligation. This contribution from the city and the employee is 3% from the employee, 1% from the city as a minimum, or 3% is the minimum for the employee. There's no new obligation to the city. This is just a choice that an employee could make to have their 457 plan one way or the other. So this is something new for us, and I think a new option for MERS, maybe.
They've had it for a while.
They've had it for a while, but we've had employees express the interest of having this as something they could utilize, and to do that, the commission needs to authorize it.
Questions? Hearing none, is there a motion for resolution authorizing the signing of the MERS for 57?
So moved.
Support. Motion support. Further questions? Tammy?
Akron,
Yes.
Epley,
Yes.
Gunther,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Simmons.
Yes.
Next, we have three ordinances. The first ordinance is related to marijuana security. Brad, are you?
Yeah, I drafted this. So this is to bring the ordinance more in line with current state law and state regulations. The ordinance as it exists requires a locked safe to be bolted to the floor of all marijuana establishments. That's not in state law or state regs anymore. It is that you have to have an enclosed locked facility, and there's some other things like that. So we just kind of updated the ordinance to be in line with current state law and state regs in the Cannabis Regulatory Agency.
Questions? Is there a motion for that ordinance?
So moved.
Support.
Motion support for the ordinance on marijuana security. It has to have 4 positive votes. Tammy?
Epley,
Yes.
Gunther,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Simmons,
Yes.
Cochran.
Yes.
Next is the ordinance regarding rental contact person. As everyone on this commission remembers, we went through that gyration twice with folks who didn't want to live here, et cetera. Brad, you rewrote that one too, right?
Yes, so this was a request from another attorney for a renter, a company in town, or a company that wanted to rent, not have an office in the city itself. And there was a study session a while back, and the commission instructed us to draft an ordinance that kind of hit the middle road of you have to have an office in the state of Michigan, and you have to be able to get into the city within 24 hours if you're needed to be here in person. So that's how we drafted this amendment, to require that, but remove then the requirement that you have to have an office in the city, a physical office here.
So, questions? They have to have email available too, is that part of it?
Yes, they have to provide email and phone to the city before they would be given the permit.
That'll be wonderful.
Other questions, anything? Hearing none, is there a motion for the resolution on rental contact person?
So moved.
Support.
Motion and support. Tammy?
Johnson,
Yes.
Simmons,
Yes.
Cochran,
Yes.
Epley,
Yes.
Gunther.
Yes. Next, an ordinance regarding our ethics policy. We've had the work session led by Commissioner Cochran and many discussions. And this is the, I think, final writing?
Yes.
Brad, you wrote the final writing as well?
I didn't write it, but I reviewed it. This just tracks with exactly the amendments that were before you last time, and the ones that Commissioner Cochran presented during the study session. So this ordinance mimics that exactly.
Questions, anyone? Anyone? Is there a motion for the ordinance on the ethics policy?
So moved. Support.
Those two. Tammy?
Simmons,
Yes.
Cochran,
Yes.
Epley,
Yes.
Gunther,
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Unscheduled business. Before anybody like to bring to the commission? Hearing none, we'll move to work session, which there is none, and we'll adjourn. Thank you.